I'm not a fan of just hiring and throwing people at problems. I think it makes way more sense to build out a strategy and say, how few hires can we make to accomplish this goal?
Why we continue to overhire inside organizations in the beginning, even in the scaling phase, without thinking about how to proper training them to be better and to work better.
Welcome to the DesignRush Podcast. I'm your host, Kia Johnson. Today's episode is a powerhouse roundtable featuring Julia Arpag, founder and CEO of Aligned Recruitment and one of tech's most sought-after recruiters, and Carlo Rivis, CEO of Innovation Discovery and strategic advisor to both startups and Fortune 500 leaders. Together, we tackle one of the biggest pitfalls in scaling a business: overhiring too early. Carla breaks down why hiring without a plan leads to chaos instead of clarity. Julia shares how lean intentional hiring creates stronger teams without the burnout or budget bloat. If you're a founder, agency leader, or executive navigating scaling in 2025, this one's for you. Watch the full episode on YouTube, listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Want to be featured? Email us at spotlight@designrush.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-world strategies from the minds shaping the future of business. Carlo, Julia, welcome to the DesignRush Podcast. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Between the two of you, you've got like decades of combined insight. But before we get into the big questions, I want to kick things off with a few quick rapid-fire questions. Are you guys ready for me?
Yeah, let's go.
Sure.
Yes. All right, let's jump in. Carlo, one book or thinker that shaped how you approach innovation?
None. Learn from everything and build your own.
Julia, one value you refuse to compromise on as a founder and leader?
Integrity.
If you weren't advising startups, what would you be doing today?
Probably the psychologist.
If you had to build a company outside of recruiting, what space would you choose?
Nonprofit.
One skill visionary founders often overlook but need to succeed.
For sure, curiosity. Be curious about everything around you.
Biggest red flag in a hiring process that tells you a company's not ready to scale?
An interview process that goes beyond 4 to 5 interviews.
Carlo, in one word, what kills innovation faster than anything else?
The wrong mindset.
Most overlooked role that makes or breaks a high-performing team?
Operations.
Those are amazing answers, guys. Thanks so much for that. This question is to both of you, but I want to start off with Carlo answering this first. Given the current landscape of constrained capital, leaner teams, and then also, these evolving customer expectations, what would you say does it really take to scale a medium-sized business into a sustainable, enterprise-ready company in 2025?
So one I think is reactiveness. So you must be fast in decision and pivot as much as you can, as much as needed from the market. But one important thing for me is that do you really need to become a corporate like we think corporates today? I don't know if you are familiar that Fortune 500 companies are failing faster than ever. So 8 years ago, Fortune 500 companies had 80 years of lifespan. Today it's just 15 on average. That is crazy. And so the world has changed completely. The market is completely different than just 10 years ago. So you must be able to think in advance and say, okay, what I will become in the next 5 years probably is not possible to predict right now. So have to build it step by step, year after years, and be ready to do that.
That's a great question. So I would say, my focus in hiring is specifically B2B tech companies. So I've seen a huge push for, do we need to hire headcount for this role, or can this be done with one of the AI tools on the market? So I think that's a really interesting question that I'm so glad businesses are asking, because I think that will prevent a lot of the rapid hiring and then rapid layoff cycles that we've seen recently. So I think what it really takes to scale is being super strategic. And before you open headcount, looking at your current team's capabilities, looking at what AI could do for you, and then seeing, okay, what higher level roles do we actually need to fill with accomplished senior level people versus the tools that are available to us today.
Studies have actually shown that like a 5% increase in customer retention can actually boost your profits by like 25 to 95%, which, it's highlighting the impact of, like rising churn rates. And then, of course, additionally, companies with slow product development cycles often face a 20% longer time to market, which affects the competitiveness. So in your experience, my question is, advising global brands, what would you say are the early indicators suggesting a business model requires a very strategic pivot?
So in the market, there is just one indicator that is really important, that are the customers. So the customer behavior. So they will decide if you will survive or not. So you have to read the customers, understand them, and see what also other competitors are doing. And if the customers are going into other competitors in buying from them and using their services, you need to change for sure something. And but in most of the case, that you need to change continuously, because today's the expectations of the customers is to have something new business models, new products, new services. And so you cannot rely on something that you have done just maybe 3 years ago and that it will last for the next 3 years. So this is not the market anymore.
I want to shift our focus a bit more on looking at, junior roles itself. I mean, AI is now coming to play, right? So there's almost like this declining demand for junior roles. I mean, companies are leaning harder into effectiveness over expansion, and AI is obviously taking over so much more routine work. So how are hiring strategies evolving to reflect like deeper business model changes, would you say?
So yeah, I think what I've experienced, not only in the almost 2 years I've been a recruitment founder, but in my tech recruitment career prior to that, I've seen just this increasing awareness of AI is not coming for strategic work. It's really not. So it's really not a scary thing for those of us who are in consultative roles. And what I think is actually so smart is looking at, instead of just blindly hiring and then again having to lay off months later, let's look at our current team, let's look at our current capabilities, and let's look at what AI tools we have on the market that could solve these business problems right now so that you can have a more successful hire. My team, for example, we only hire roles that pay $150K to $400K. Like, we only focus on those strategic high-level positions because we know that's where the growth is, and we know that's where these hires will actually really drive growth for our clients.
And then what patterns are you actually seeing inside leadership teams that, signal a company is no longer just growing then, but like fundamentally repositioning, if you were to shift your focus a little bit on that end?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think I see fundamental repositioning when, for example, the Shopify CEO, he just had this leaked memo where he did tell his whole team, don't come to me with headcount requests unless you have a baked out proposal of why it won't work internally for you to repurpose current team members or to use an AI tool. So I think that's an indication of that seismic cultural strategic shift happening when leadership is seeing the opportunity there, not only for cost savings, but for increased efficiency. And like Carlo said, ultimately serving your customers better, because that's the goal of every company, is to make sure your customer is happy, your retention is high, those pieces we talked about earlier. So I think that's a good indicator that a company is ready to move in that direction.
So then, Carlo, I mean, in terms of like what you would say is, I guess your go-to framework, if you look at leaders, evaluating rather innovation initiatives, especially in, resource-constrained environments, like, is there a go-to framework that you work from? And then also, do you use like a standardized checklist, like expected ROI over time, a single line pitch, and upfront cost?
My opinion is that the frameworks are killing innovations most of the times. I'm seeing innovation as art more than business. And this is what many times today we are forgetting. That you must be free to go wherever you want, and just trying to fit. To find the perfect match between the market, the need of the market, the real needs of the market, where the market is going, and the creativities in what we can be the next big things that you can appear into the market. Many times the companies are using frameworks and stuff that is limiting the creativity and the design of novel solutions. And so for this reason, most of the companies are not innovating today. It's pretty hard to see visionaries and innovation leader into the market today. So most of the times they are innovation followers. There are one company that is bringing the big ideas into the market, is making a lot of money, is growing fast and so on, is the disruptive ideas, and the others that are trying to follow them. And that's the biggest problem for the companies today, in particular with the AI revolution that is coming on right now. Who is not innovating today, who is not adapting AIs today is already late, because we don't have a lot of AI experts around, and adapting AIs takes time for large organizations. The infrastructures, the people, the culture. So it's not something that can happen overnight. If you didn't start ready, you probably are already failing and you don't know it.
Mm-hmm. So you're speaking to framework right now, Carlo, and seeing it in the light of, I guess if one were to actually put a word over it, you'd say it's a very traditional way of actually doing things. And what you need to do right now is you need to change that. You need to shift direction in how you're approaching the market right now. So for you, Julia, do you find that it's maybe similar in terms of like just, hiring and in the spaces that you're working in right now?
So I have to give some professional pushback to Carlo. And I would say in my space, in my work, frameworks are key, absolutely key for me to successfully deliver for my clients. I agree with you. They can't suffocate innovation and they can't suffocate creativity. You have to have space for what does this situation call for beyond our standard framework. I completely agree with that. But I think in my case and in my industry with tech hiring specifically, the reason my firm has been so successful in the year and a half that we've existed thus far is because we do have frameworks that work. We have discovery questions, because we're a services-based business, right? It's not a software tool that I'm just handing to all my clients and it works the same for everyone. Our process is completely tailored to what our individual clients need. So the reason we're able to deliver is because we have a framework for the questions to ask during the discovery process, the solutions that we offer as we're recruiting candidates, the way that we headhunt, the way that we send messages, the way that we follow up, the way that we plan the interview process. All of that is highly detailed, highly structured. And that's really what sets us apart. That's what makes us a white glove recruitment consulting firm and not just a run-of-the-mill recruitment firm.
In my entire career, every time that I have been, in some relationship with an HR department, the surveys about performance or whatever, internal organizations or the recruiting process, I felt out all the frameworks they had in place. For example, for me right now, it's impossible to be hired from a companies. They don't understand my eclectic background. I don't fit with anything that they have inside their frameworks. And this sometimes I see like the problem of some large organizations, that the most, let's say, the smartest people that are able to shape the organizations in different ways, because they are thinking in different ways, don't fit the current frameworks and cannot be hired from the organization. So you're losing all I call it the black sheeps. I don't know if you know that the story of the black sheeps. Normally, we are here in this age because our black sheeps are relatives, okay? Because they decided to take a different path during the history and survive the changes of the history. The white sheeps will die. And this is what is the similarities inside the business, that they need to do something different. And you need to try to identify the black sheeps into the employees market and having them into organizations and giving them more freedom than the others to shape your future company.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, Carlo, I think that's a big reason why you own your own business as opposed to being an employee, right? Because to your point, oftentimes hiring teams are like, I need the candidates to check these 10 boxes or else we won't hire them. Like, we simply won't. And to your point, there are so many talented people who just don't check those 10 boxes. So I think those people often end up going out and building their own companies. I think that's really where they see opportunity and growth and scale and honestly more fun, because they're like, I don't want to check those 10 boxes. I just want to go do my own thing. So I love that journey for you.
Loving that, loving that. Yeah, no, definitely. I guess, if you were to look at it like in a larger scale, you're talking about the black sheep there, Carlo. There are just so many different versions of us humans out here. We can't just all be a one size fits all, but some of us do tend to kind of progress to one side, whereas others, progress to the other side, and that's okay. There's a space for everyone and everything. Yeah, definitely. Julia, I also just want to find out from you. When a company is at like a growth crossroads, how do leadership teams decide whether to hire, whether to outsource, or just optimize like internally? This I think would be so essential for when you're looking at, just sustainability within the company and just getting the company in a space of thriving. Like when do you do this? Because even though it's just hiring, it actually affects ROI at the end of the day, right?
Oh, massively. No, you should always be hiring with an eye for ROI. That should be why you make every hiring decision you make. So I just worked with the seed series cybersecurity startup on that exact question. They, again, just closed their second round of seed funding. And in order to get to their Series A, they've got to increase their annual revenue. That just is what their investors told them. This is what you have to do. So they know they're a product-led company. So they know the way they're going to increase their revenue is by beefing up their software engineering team. Other companies, it would make more sense to beef up sales or marketing. For them, they know they have to focus on engineering. So that's what we did together. We hired 3 engineers. They're hitting the ground running. They're beefing up their product, improving their features. And hopefully this time next year, we'll be celebrating them closing their Series A, because they had that understanding of their industry and their team to know if our goal is to double ARR, we're going to do it by hiring engineers.
Totally hearing you there. I think, Carlo, let's get stuck into the nitty gritty here as well with you. With the S&P down over 10% this month, the new US tariffs hitting global supply chains, are we seeing that companies, especially in tech, have actually overinvested in innovation without clear commercial paths? If you were to look at the current state right now, what would you say to that?
Yes, no, absolutely. Not just based on the current situation that is, global situation that is just a bit different, but also before, in particular in the US more than in other, countries, because other countries are not so they don't have so much money to invest and making, bad decisions sometimes on investments. But the problem mainly is that, for sure, there have been, hypes in the past, buzzwords, marketing jargon, stuff that has triggered the investment in specific, industries or technologies like AI today's, but also in the past blockchain. The blockchain, they invested so much money in a solution that normally didn't really need a blockchain technology behind. 90% of a blockchain solution didn't need a blockchain as technology to provide the service. Okay, and this is happening also today in the AIs, where they are investing a lot of money in AIs without thinking properly of a business model of companies or organizations. Most of AI solutions today on the market will be not scalable, because the computational power needed to provide the service on a scale base will be too high in comparison of price and cost, and so for the company will be a failure. We need also to understand that in some ways that the investors needs to change their approach to the investments. That most of investors are looking for the unicorn. So are looking for this large organization company that provide more than 1 billion and so on. And but the statistics shows, the numbers show that 90% of exit are done by unicorns. However, the 90% of investors are investing in incremental solutions, even if a unicorns has disruptive solutions. And so they're investing the wrong ways, in the wrong space. So the numbers are showing a totally different, reality about how you have to invest into the market. However, the investors continue to invest with an old mentality. So here, is still, we are fighting against the wrong mindset all the times. We have all the numbers out there. We have all the information. So we need to learn from them, from the customers, from the market, from the information that we have, and we have to take decisions based on that instead of just the feelings or for the previous experience that is already old today.
A lot of the changes that are currently happening, and I'm specifically speaking about DEI, and I'm sure that you must have gone through some processes there as well. How is it looking in the market on your end?
It's been crazy. So one of my clients actually, they're a nonprofit in the tech startup space, which is really unique. They basically train founders through entrepreneurial programs and apprenticeships to become tech startup founders. And a lot of their funding comes from the government in order for them to provide these services, specifically to founders with a disability. That's a big part of their focus. So there was a lot of concern about DEI funding for them. Now, luckily, they are funded by a lot of private companies as well who have committed to maintaining funding for this. They're heavily invested in entrepreneurship. But I know there is one example of so many companies where they're like, will we continue to exist with this massive shift with the DEI policy from the government? And then, of course, all the layoffs of the last several weeks in the government. I'm a huge advocate of, kind of to your black sheep point earlier, Carlo, considering non-traditional candidates for other sectors, like all these laid off government employees. I'm like, guys, throw them in a tech startup. Like, they can handle shifting priorities, different leaders, like they can do it. So I'm hoping that there will be some open-mindedness in other industries to kind of handle this influx of laid off workers. But yeah, I think those are really fair questions and really fair issues.
A common mistake in early stage companies is building out full go-to-market teams like sales and marketing before validating that product market fit. I mean, we've seen Series A startups hire entire SDR teams before confirming demand or message clarity, and then only to scale back 6 months later. So my question to you is, in 2025, how should founders then approach hiring when their product is still evolving? It's kind of like it's a very tricky space, eh? So yeah, what do you have to say to that?
I'm a huge fan of hiring a founding account executive. So you make one key sales hire because you have to go to market before it's fully baked out, right? Like, you've got to start making revenue as quickly as possible, but you need to hire someone who gets that that's the stage that you're at. You're not handing them a fully baked out product. You're not going to have them be one of a team of 50. They've got to be entrepreneurial. They've got to be kind of crazy, right? If they're going to be able to build the ship while you're flying it. So I think you make that one key hire and they're able to weather those storms of figuring out product market fit alongside you and your engineering team and your product team and your marketing team. And then once you've validated sales process with that one person, then you can start to scale your sales team from there.
Carla, I want to find out from you now, your traditional innovation models. I mean, you were talking earlier about, us not really going that route, so to speak. You're looking at your siloed R&D teams, your long waterfall roadmaps. They're losing ground to, the more agile, the cross-functional models that are used by companies like your Amazon, your Tesla, and your Adobe. So we're seeing more squads aligned by outcomes, and not departments. Would you then say, I mean, it's kind of also touching on what we spoke about earlier, that just agreeing, I guess, that these newer internal structures would actually lead to better execution.
Yes, no, absolutely. That it's the market is showing it, so we don't have, to reinvent the wheel here. So
yes,
the market is saying that is a better execution, but in particular, if you work by objectives, is always better. You know where you want to go, and the people are free to do what is need to be done to achieve them, and this is really important because we need to give people the freedom to do their jobs and properly. One thing that probably I don't like too much today is in the environment of the companies, corporates in general, is that they are pushing the people too much to work in overtimes continuously, to try to achieve better results. And in my experience, you never achieve better results if you push people too much. So in particular, when you are working with innovations or complex stuff, solutions, even developers, right now they have to develop 12 hours per day or more trying to build faster AIs to be more competitive. But in the end of the day, it's really a good strategy to provide better code, better solution in the end, because our brain need to digest things. I've worked as a developer in the past, that I'm graduating computer science. So my first years of career has been as a developer, but I needed time to find the right solution. Sometimes I was stuck in something and I try for hours to solve the problems without any solution. And then I went to sleep, and the day after, in 5 minutes, I had the solution. I fixed everything without any problems. And this is what I'm doing normally with innovations, that I try to have free times, in particular in the afternoon, to take a walk, digest all the information, let my brain digest, and making the connections between all my knowledge. And the day after, I have everything that I need to move forward faster. And so we need to remember that the brain is a perfect machine if we know how to use it. If we push the boundaries.
What you're saying is that the brain is still the most powerful machine there is. It's still the most powerful computing space, at the end of the day. I even want to pick your brain, Carlo, because do you think that because of your background, that is why you're pulling so far away from those traditional ways of business? Is that why you're thinking so much out the box right now? Because of that, because of the exposure that you had to certain things, yeah?
Yes, no, that I was thinking a lot about this, why I'm able to think in these ways and why people don't understand me most of the times, because they are more focused, in a box, inside a box. And
Yes.
I grew up in the north of Italy, in a region close to the border with Austria and Switzerland. So I've been, 30 minutes from Austria and from Switzerland, 1 hour from Germany and France. So it was really close to different type of cultures. And this opened up my mindset in many different ways, because I was curious about nature. So I studied different cultures. I've been inside different type of, industries, businesses. So I ran 10 different businesses in many different industries and also geographies. And this had me, in learning that most of the times we don't have the right answer. Okay, so it's impossible to have a right answer. You can just know what you don't have to do, so what is totally wrong for your business, but about what is right, you have options. So you have just to cut out the wrong stuff and so on. And the more you know about what is going on into the world, the more you know what are the possibilities and opportunities out there. Every country has the same issues. Every company has the same issues. So you have just to learn from others, understanding how in Germany, how in China, how in Canada, they have solved the same problem. And let's see if something that I can use it in my country. But if not, I have opened up my opportunities and my mindset to other opportunities and had me in understanding the different perspective of the same problem. So normally I analyze the same problem with at least 5-10 different perspectives in order to find the right solution. And this is what you need today,
Definitely. It sounds like your mind is very busy. And I know Julia's mind is just as busy, because it's like I can actually see her busy thinking, her thoughts going there at a million miles. Julia, what do you have to say to that?
It's so interesting, Carlo, to hear your story. I specifically, because my career has mostly been in one industry. Like I've really been in recruitment just about since I graduated from college in one form or another. So it's interesting to hear that you take all these different perspectives into your work as a consultant. And it's so funny to hear you say, it's why people don't understand you.
Yeah, like
That really cracked me up to hear you say that. So it's cool to hear you come from a different perspective than I personally do, but it's cool to hear how your brain works in that context.
About this, just a quick story. I tested an HR AIs that has interviewed me, okay, for a possible job, and
Wow.
was amazing. It was the first time that I've been interviewed from someone that really understood my background and had ask me questions that make really sense for my background and follow-up questions of what I told to them that makes really sense and was aligned with what I was doing. Because most of the times I don't know how to answer some questions because the questions make totally no sense for me. And it was really amazing. And I felt understood.
Oh, that's so cool because so
Amazing.
often in my line of work, I come across AI bots that screen candidates and give candidates the opposite experience where they're like, oh my God, that was a horrible candidate experience. I just got interviewed by a robot. Like, that was so dumb. But it's so cool to hear you say that you're like, oh my God, for the first time I felt understood during an interview process. That is such an interesting perspective. Thank you for sharing that.
Julia, I know that Carlo is sort of like he's taking and soaking so much in from many different, perspectives and just industries that he's been in. But for yourself, there's also something to be said about being in something niche, right? Did you find that building the business was maybe difficult at first or easy at first because it was so niche?
That's a great question. So that's the advice you always get as a founder, right? Go as niche as possible. I'm sure you guys have heard the quote, niches get riches. So that was something I was taught from day one of scaling aligned recruitment. And honestly, because I had worked in tech recruitment for several years before I launched the business, I had a lot of people that already knew me from that context who reached out and said, oh my gosh, you started your own firm. I want to work with you. So that was huge. That was a huge reason for our early success. I will say though, I would never describe owning a business as easy. Even with those inbound opportunities, even with the reputation that I've built for myself in this industry, it's not easy. There are always ebbs and flows. The market is always crazy in one way, shape, or form. I'm in the people business, so there are so many things outside of my control. So the biggest thing I've learned, you mentioned earlier that AI only works if our intelligence works. So I really had to grow my own muscle of grit, perseverance, teaching myself as much as I possibly can about mindset, about overcoming challenges, because way more than like the day-to-day activities I'm doing as a founder, my mindset is what really has dictated my ability to continue to persevere and not be in that 80% of founders you mentioned earlier whose businesses fail within the first year.
I think it takes a bit of gumption, hey? It's like you gotta have, I reckon, that X factor. I mean, all those, those shows like Idols and all of that. If you don't have that one person with that X factor, they can sing till they're blue in the face, but they're never really gonna make it. I mean, it's a sad truth, but it is what it is. And I think it's that same kind of like, if one were to use it as an analogy for, yourself within your business framework as well. So very, very interesting. So, Carlo, what would you say then? I mean, and this is going to maybe touching on a bit of frameworks. I'm really poking the bear right now. What would you say are then the critical steps in actually converting like a visionary concept into a go-to-market roadmap?
Ooh, that's a tough question,
I knew. Let's dig deep now. Yes.
Some years ago, I worked with a company that was a PhD project. Okay, it was based in that wanted to change the medical research. They created just the cardiovascular a virtual copy of the cardiovascular system based on mathematical models. Okay, and we tried to put this on the market without knowing exactly how to do it. Because it was hard to understand where was the values on that, because it was a research project, it was not really a market project. Long story short, the first thing that we did was speaking with everybody in the industries, all the sectors, from medical companies, pharmaceutical, medical devices, hospitals, consultants, customers, whatever, to try to really understand the market, first of all, to understand the market fit, of course, but then also to understand what was really possible or not. And the experts of the industry, mathematical models and whatever, they told us that to arrive to our vision of creating a digital copy of the entire human body would needed 100 years. Okay, around roughly, because it was too complex, so it was just an estimation, but everybody agreed on that. But speaking with the experts around, connecting the dots of what we got in the tools from them, we designed a roadmap of 2 years, a concrete roadmap of just 2 years of all these technologies. And this was possible when you start, really going out there, speaking with everybody around in the entire world. So from the different experts around the world, the different companies, the different industries, and really listen to them and try to connecting the dots about all this kind of knowledge. Because what we're missing today is that we think that we know stuff. We don't know anything. 99% of the things, we don't know 90% or 99% of the things today. And many times it's just because, we are limited in our space, in our industry, in our geography, in our time is limited, But somebody in the world has already goes in different directions. So we have to understand how to connect the dots. And this is the first step that you have to do in order to bring in a visionary ideas into the market, because you must know exactly what is possible or not today, because otherwise you will start working on something that you think that will be possible in the next 10, 20 years, and someone will release it next year. So first of all is validating your visionary ideas, understanding what is really possible, open up your mind and speak with everybody. And then after that, arrive to create the roadmap to the market. You will have enough knowledge to do that in any ways you want, because once you really understand the market from all the perspectives possible, it's an easy way to do that.
So then, Julia, validating your vision, would you then say one can apply that actually to business strategy itself? Specifically looking at, say maybe you're downsizing one vertical and investing in another, like basically execution will dip during the transition. So what practical steps can I take to keep my team focused, productive, and aligned through the change without losing their critical momentum? But as Carlo was saying now, is like validating your vision. I can actually see all of this like aligning with each other. What do you have to say to that?
Yeah. No, I think the need for vision as a founder or a leader is absolutely paramount. So we follow the entrepreneurial operating system here at Aligned Recruitment. And a big part of that is, as the CEO and founder, I cast vision very candidly and very openly with my team. So that is absolutely something that I recommend to my clients as well, in terms of how to communicate to their teams, especially to your point when they're doing a massive transition or when they are having to downsize, because obviously you really want to retain that top talent while doing those shifts and making those shifts. So I think number one is communicating the why as candidly as you can. Like, what is our overarching business's why? And then what's the why for this specific hard decision that we had to make? And then secondly, I think it's having those really talented second line leaders who can manage through change and can really continue to be. And this is where EQ comes in, not just IQ. You have to have the emotional intelligence to shepherd your people through those hard transitions to make sure you don't lose momentum in the process.
So true, because you are that shepherd, at the end of the day, it's definitely that. I'm going to keep with the thread right now, Julia. We've actually seen, Twitter, for example, it's quite an extreme example. Twitter has actually slashed, 80% of its workforce. They're still operating, or Twitter X, that is, while most companies, can't actually take that approach. So it actually raises quite a real question, how do you restructure or downsize in a way that actually preserves the morale, keeps your team productive rather than disengaged? And then I would think that, just touching on what we were speaking about, having that vision, if you already have that vision as the leader, it would then naturally, I would guess, fall into place with your team, and your team wouldn't then disengage. Or do you have anything extra you'd like to add on to that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so much to talk about here. Number one, I don't think Elon Musk really cared about maintaining morale when he slashed the team at X, to be fully transparent with you. I don't think that's a priority for him, which is why it worked. Like, whatever. He's like, I don't care about morale at all. He's like, I care about saving money, I care about efficiency, and I care about continuing to operate at the level that we've been operating at, even with slashing costs significantly. So according to those barometers, he totally succeeded. He killed it, right? If that's what he was going for, he did it. Great job. If you're looking to maintain morale, that's a whole different conversation, right? But I'm actually a big advocate of running your company as leanly as possible. I'm not a fan of just hiring and throwing people at problems. I think it makes way more sense to build out a strategy and say, how few hires can we make to accomplish this goal? That's how I run my personal business, and that is how I recommend to all of my clients that they should run theirs.
You know that some years ago, I was admiring Elon Musk for the success that he was doing into the market.
Yes.
Nowadays, it's really hard to let's say love it, but it's more like the way that he is doing stuff. I understand why he's doing something, because that I told you I come from Italy. In Italy, we have less resources than here. When I came here the first time in the US, I noticed immediately that normally you employed 10 times more employees than in Italy regularly for the same things. That makes no sense for me, because I come from a place where we must be really optimized, work hard, and do the job of 10 people. Otherwise, we cannot survive in our economy, And so I totally understand why Elon Musk had needed to, cut out people. Then the way that he has done was terrible in my opinion, because they are people, so they need to be, you need to take care of them in any case. But the question is more like why we hired them in the first place, why we continue to overhire inside organizations in the beginning, in the scaling phase, without thinking about how to proper train them to be better and to work better in a way that makes more sense for organizations, instead of scaling and then cut and then scaling and then cut without thinking about the people itself. So it's just about being aware that everybody can be a crucial part of the companies if trained properly, and sometimes let them also working properly in a way. If you treat people with respect of their roles, they probably will give you back much more to organizations. And you need to overhire because of the people will do more, also working less most of the time.
In your experience working with leadership teams, what would you say is the biggest red or green flag that signals whether a company's brand, like from its culture to its strategy, is like truly built for long-term scalability and trusted partnerships? I mean, trust is such an important thing here, What would you say to that? Yeah.
So they've got to validate with current clients. So we talked about retention earlier. So I look at their retention numbers. I look at their testimonials from existing clients. I think that's the best predictor of future success. So that's a massive green flag if they do have those pieces in place. And then also a massive green flag is the retention of their internal team. Like, have people, even if it's super lean, right? They only have let's say 5 employees. Have those 5 employees been there for the long haul, or are they rehiring every 6 months because people burn out and are exhausted and don't love it? So retention, both internally and externally, I would say are the biggest green flags.
That from an innovation perspective or something like that, you need, to see that people are running experiments. So the companies needs to continue to evaluate ideas also from employees, that this is extremely important, that you are an organization that need to grow continuously. And the first step to growth is that the employees that are working daily with customers, that are hearing about what is not going into organizations, are able to be listened. Because if you are not listening to your employees, you are ignoring most of the problems that you have inside your organizations, because the employees knows the problems internally more than you, and externally from the customers, because they are the ones that are speaking with the customers. And so if you have in place structures, methodologies, something that allow employees, to report to you over things that they see that is not working, providing ideas, making them also working on their own ideas, this will help the company in surviving for the long run. Many organizations has run these programs internally, where the people can start their own startups inside organizations, because most of the times they are starting something related to the field and the organization itself. And so they are really working in open innovations internally. That is amazing.
Julia, who would you say is a leader or founder in your space who's actually doing it right, and what would you love to ask them?
The first thought that comes to mind for this question is Diane Prince. She is a recruitment entrepreneur who has started and sold 5 different recruitment businesses. One of them she sold for $28 million. So this girl is clearly doing something right. She's a genius. The good news is I can ask her whatever I want because I hired her as my executive coach because I was like, I want to be you when I grow up. So
that is so cool.
Yes.
Whoa.
I'm very grateful to have such a badass founder in my corner. So she just has obviously a massive wealth of knowledge. And what's so cool about her is she's been building and selling businesses for 30 years, but she's so good at keeping her finger on the pulse of what's new and up and coming.
Ooh,
like,
that's nice.
I don't know how she does it. But this girl has got it down. So that's been a huge benefit to me as I've scaled my company.
It's that X factor, hey, I'm telling you. That is absolutely amazing. So Carlo, for yourself, who would you say is one strategist or innovation leader that you admire? I mean, someone that you think more founders should be following right now.
You know that I will provide a out of the box answer. I would go with Leonardo da Vinci. That is not current, it's not something of today's, but he was a genius and he was the right balance between, a scientist, an artist, an innovator. He saw the world in a different ways, and we need more people like him, and maybe the AI will provide us the ways, to interact with him at a certain point. But because he was someone that really tried to move the world forward without thinking about the business, without thinking about anything else, but just for the good of the society and in any different directions. So we need more people like that today, because today's, unfortunately, even if we have a lot of visionaries around, they are lacking resources. The most visionary people don't have the money, don't have the connections, because they are in the labs creating amazing stuff. And the investors are investing in a really incremental solution and stuff that most of the times we don't really need. For this reason, 90% of the startups are failing today, And the ones that has enough, knowledge and skills to build their companies, the empires like Elon Musk, Bezos, and Zuckerberg, and so on. At a certain point, they lose, the ways of the society. They will more focus on building for themselves instead of the others. And so on. That's why it's hard to take in them, as a reference point.
That's wonderful. I think you both have highlighted some amazing examples of people here today, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. Julia, Carlo, thank you so much for joining me on the DesignRush podcast. It's been a pleasure. You've been amazing. Your insights have been wonderful. I really enjoyed this conversation so much. Can you tell? It's actually been really, really great. I hope you enjoyed it as well, and it would be lovely to have you back on the DesignRush podcast soon.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Kia.
Thank you. Bye.
Curious about what top brands look for when choosing an agency? Tune in to our latest episodes where we reveal the decision-making secrets of leading brands. Subscribe to the DesignRush podcast and stay ahead of the competition.